Jason Reitman is back on the podcast. We're
Josh, how
doing
are
it.
you?
It's so good to see you, man.
I'm thrilled to have our 17th conversation about movies.
Well, not only that. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about. Congratulations, sir. As we tape this, it has just screened at New York Comic-Con. I was privileged to be in the audience, and that is the way you want to screen a movie, my friend. Congratulations. It's awesome.
Thank you very much. Josh, what was the first movie that you and I talked about?
I went back and thought about this. It must have been Juno. I don't think we talked for Thank You for Smoking.
Okay, I was curious.
So I do actually kind of want to delve into our past because I want to give you a compliment, and in exchange for that, I want a bit of an apology or at least an explanation.
Wow.
You ready?
Okay, let's go.
Okay, let's do this. Let's dig in. Your movie's fantastic. The movie is so thrilling. I mean,
Thank you.
You know I am a huge Ghostbusters fan as well as a fan of yours.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a miracle. This is a hard high wire act to navigate, and you truly deliver on so many levels. At the same time, Jason, we've talked for 15 years.
Yeah.
We've talked about
There's a trust. There's a bond.
There was a trust.
Whoa, Josh.
I'm just saying, how many times have we talked about Ghostbusters? How many times have you said to me, and to be fair, many others,
right,
you don't want me directing your Ghostbusters.
Right.
It's going to be two people talking in a room. It's not going to be interesting.
Right.
My question,
yes.
Were you lying to me? Were you lying to yourself? What gives?
I don't know. What do you think the actual answer to that is?
I think you evolved. I think you got to a place where I think in the back of your head it was always there, and maybe you didn't want to acknowledge that, and you needed to establish who you were on your own merits before you could maybe go back and kind of do your riff on dad's baby. I don't know.
Look,
you tell me.
I'm like Indiana Jones. They've just said, hey, we have found a map to find the goblet of Christ. You need to go get it. And then he's like, I don't know if I can do it. And they're like, well, we lost the last guy, and it was your dad. And now you got to go. And he goes and he finds his father, and they do it together. I think this was our last crusade.
Tell me this. Okay.
Are you saying I chose wisely?
You did choose. Look, I'm happy to insert as many Indiana Jones references.
You deserve an honest answer. I've been around this franchise since as long as I can remember. Right? I mean, I was 6 years old on the set of Ghostbusters. I was 7 years old when it came out. I remember being on that set. It's literally my first memories. I remember seeing the guys in their flight suits. I remember seeing the car in Manhattan. I remember seeing when they dropped marshmallow on William Atherton. I remember seeing my dad on the Chapman crane. It's the first time I really kind of thought of my father as a director. And that movie was a sensation. Everybody I know was a Ghostbuster that Halloween. Everybody knew the song. And while I had doubts about being a filmmaker, I was certain I was going to never attempt to make a Ghostbusters movie, because why would I enter that gauntlet and fail in that shadow or fail in that spotlight? Sorry. And over time, I had these ideas because, look, I grew up on the same movies. I love Ghostbusters. I love the movies of the 80s. And it was my father that finally gave me the final push. I had this story. I pitched it to him in secret. He really loved it. He responded. He literally cried when I told him the story for this movie. And we went into Sony and I said, hey, Gil and I are willing to write this movie, but it's got to be a secret, because I didn't want anyone finding out. So when I used to say, you don't want me directing this movie, it's going to be two people talking about ghosts, I think somewhere in my heart, I really believed that.
When did the first germ of this idea come into your brain? When did you at least kind of contemplate maybe that there's something to hear?
Literally had this image of a girl with a proton pack in a field, and I would tell it to people on set as a joke, as a kind of what my Ghostbusters movie would be? It'd be a girl on a farm with a proton pack.
Right.
And it was a nice conversation ender, because people would be like, oh, okay, well, that's not going to happen. Because everyone in their head is Ghostbusters takes place in Manhattan. And then when Harold passed away, I just kind of suddenly knew, oh, maybe this is the Spengler family.
Right.
And I started kind of tracking a route that led to the end of the film. And for whatever reason, once I know the ending of a movie, that's when I know how to tell the story. that's where it oddly starts for me. And there came a moment where I knew what the ending of this movie was, and then I kind of needed to tell it.
So when we last had a lengthy chat, it was a couple years back, for the front runner and Tully. And then 2 months later, it's announced you're doing Ghostbusters. So by then, were the wheels basically, you were basically there? Like, did you have the script? Were you, when you were in that mode? Because it's funny I listen back to our conversation, and a lot of our chat is about like 80s movies. Like, I think you were like, it seems like you were really marinating and germinating in that.
I was writing Ghostbusters during Tully and the front runner.
Yeah.
So I really was just lying to your face.
It's okay. Look, at least a great movie came out of it, so I forgive you.
I am not making the next Star Wars film.
Now, basically, you just admitted you're making the next Star Wars movie. Okay, good to know. So what did you say your dad got emotional? Talk to me a little bit about, this is a movie about a family, and your family was very much present at the New York Comic-Con screening. Your dad is, of course, a producer, and you worked with him before. Talk to me about, working with your dad. And not only you talked about, and I think you were not being facetious about how your dad was literally like next to you on set during this.
No, that wasn't an exaggeration. I mean, literally director's chair to director's chair. And, like, imagine if your parents came to your work and like weighed in on everything you were doing. I mean, there's something charming and lovely about it.
My mom is right out of the shot right here. She's watching me right now, giving me the thumbs up,
and
thumbs down.
How does she think you're doing?
Whole thumbs down.
Boo! Your mom and my dad would get along. No, my dad was really proud of me, and he would just weigh in on stuff. He's a director. He can't help himself. I'm the same way. And, when I produce, I try to kind of just put wind into my director's sails, but I know better than to give them thoughts, because I know if I start, I won't be able to stop. And my father and we would talk about things, but it was also really cool because there was like a day where we were trying to get the slime color right. And we were on set and we had different buckets of slime, and my father walked right up and went, that one. And it was like, there it is, folks,
Right.
He's the expert. And he would tell me advice like about wind, that Ghostbusters, the original film, it's filled with wind. That's how they identified the presence of ghosts. It's right. You see people's hair going, their shirt going, trees going. And so off of his advice, we had a truck that had everything from a leaf blower to a 6-foot Ritter. And we were constantly experimenting with wind. So it's all this technique. And frankly, he just makes me a better director.
Yeah. Is there, this movie backwards and forwards. I know this movie backwards and forwards. Like, this is the movie that everyone can quote, that know the original. I mean, of course, they know backwards and forwards. That being said, I assume when you delve into something like this, you go back, you look at it again, maybe with a new perspective, with like a forensic analysis of like what makes a Ghostbusters movie work. So what did you discover when you kind of went back for the 50th time, but this time knowing you were going to be actually directing a Ghostbusters movie?
Like, I don't want to bore you because like it's a long, it was everything, we were trying to, I'll say this. Everyone who worked on Ghostbusters Afterlife was a Ghostbusters fan. So once we start opening this up to every department, you have Will Files, our sound designer, who worked on Force Awakens. He opened up the mix from the original Ghostbusters and was able to find the original proton pack sound, the original PKE meter sound, the original Ecto 1 siren. We have all those original sounds in there. Our composer, Rob Simonson, not only went into Elmer Bernstein's original, music sheets, but found the mic plot for how they recorded the orchestra for the original Ghostbusters. We've got Harold Ramis's proton pack out of storage from Sony. We LiDAR scanned it, built our our proton packs based on that. Our wardrobe supervisor, our costume designer, Danny Glicker, found the original white material that they made the ghosts from the patch on the flight suit. And there was only a little bit left. And so all our ghosts on our flight suits were from the same material that made the original ones back in '84. Right. I can go on and on and on about the level of detail, the archaeological detail to get things right. We also went back and got the original dailies. We went to the salt mine and got the dailies from '84 out and started scanning old cloud tank footage, scanning original dailies that wound up in this film. Found the footage of my mom, my sister, and I that got cut out of the film in '84, put it back into this one. So and we were talking about Indiana Jones. Literally, we were doing archaeological work.
And what about from a thematic standpoint? Because like so much of that, there's so much you could decipher from that first film of what works. And one of the things that I would think was scary when you're doing something like this is like you could owe a lot of the first film's success to the camaraderie of that cast, to that chemistry, what Bill does, what the entire cast does. You obviously, without ruining anything, don't have that entirely in this. That's not what this film rests on. So is that a scary proposition? Are you do lean on other aspects of that first film that you know worked, or is it just about casting the hell out of it and just finding the genius people like McKenna, et cetera, that make it work this time?
I knew from the beginning that I was not going to be able to make a movie about those original guys. And frankly, that's not what interested me. What interested me was the rest of us who want to be those original guys. And that's what I made a movie about. It's about wanting to be a Ghostbuster, because all of us identify that. All of us identify with wanting to put on the proton pack and fire it. All of us identify with wanting to drive Ecto-1 and catch a ghost. So I made a movie about young people who find out that they are Ghostbusters. They're born into it. You know, it's no accident that my father's a Ghostbuster, and I made a movie about the grandchildren of Ghostbusters and what that legacy feels like. But more than anything, I wanted the audience to see themselves on screen. I wanted them to feel like this is what it's like to want to be a Ghostbuster, because Ghostbusters, whoever they are, whether it's the original guys, our team, or Paul Feig's cast, they have always been outsiders who find their way into Ghostbusters, who find their way into heroicism through Ghostbusting.
I'm sure you're looking forward to, I mean, one of the dreams of something like this. I mean, you said there were plenty of Juno outfits at Halloween for years, and they still are.
Yeah.
You could imagine McKenna, the character McKenna plays in this, hopefully, I think it will, judging from the reaction of the audience, is going to make a huge impact on young women in particular. I'm
looking forward to the Juno Ghostbusters crossover.
The mashup. Costume. I'm working on it in my on my loom right now.
Really, what I'd love to see. Orange stripes and a wand. Yeah. Look, again, I was a Ghostbuster for Halloween. The idea that there might be our cast as Halloween characters. The whole thrill of doing a huge movie like this is you speak to the world. It's an ability to kind of touch popular culture.
Yeah.
And I get that this is not my movie. It is not my franchise. I am merely picking it up for a moment. And that's how all of us felt. All of us felt like this thing exists in the hearts of others now. We're simply going to pick it up for a moment, dust it off, set it back down for the next person to pick it up.
This film, in among other things, is a real tribute to Harold Ramis, who is obviously so important to the original Ghostbusters and just comedy and great filmmaking. Did you have much of a relationship growing up? Like, did you like spend time with Harold? And when you endeavor on this film, again, without ruining anything, I would imagine maybe you have to have some conversations with his family and get their buy-in to an extent.
I mean, this is a movie that I made for my father and my daughter, and I made it for the Ramises. And I wasn't going to make it unless the Ramis family was on board. My father was the first person who read the script. And then after that, it was Erica Ramis. It was their kids. It was Violet Ramis, who, I grew up on the set of Ghostbusters with. I didn't really know Harold Ramis that well. Obviously, I met him a bunch of times. But my relationship is with his work, like everybody else. My relationship is with his work as a Second City comedian, who is one of kind of the founders of 1970s comedy, who created Stripes and Animal House and Ghostbusters, and then directed, obviously, Vacation and Groundhog Day, and even all the way up to acting, in the Judd Apatow film. He feels like family, but I think he feels like family to all of us.
Right.
And there was just this kind of brilliant kindness to him. Everyone's got a favorite Ghostbuster in the way that everyone's got a favorite Beatle, and mine was always Egon Spengler. So I really wanted to make a Spengler story.
It's interesting because, as you alluded to at the outset of this conversation, as we discussed kind of like the joke about when's Jason going to do it? Does it even make sense? Is it going to just be two people talking about it? Has always been this curiosity, especially since the announcement.
Why isn't anyone bugging Sofia Coppola about making a Godfather movie? I mean, come on. Why is this all on me?
I'll start. I'd like to.
Can we get into that already? Actually, you know what? I would want to see. I would love to see Sofia Coppola's The Conversation.
That sure, yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. Don't divert the focus from yourself. No, this is about you today. What was I going to say? I was going to say that, oh, I know. So, okay, the Jason Reitman version of a Ghostbusters movie. One of the intriguing things I noticed is you didn't necessarily like hire the entire crew from Star Wars on this. Like maybe you did. You know what I mean? You might have picked and chose some people to help with certain aspects that you weren't familiar with, but a lot of this core group are the same people you've been making movies with virtually from the start.
Yeah.
Was that something that you knew immediately, or was there a temptation to be like, let's just farm in like the freaking Chris Nolan crew? I need like big time sci-fi
I got a family
experts.
of people that I make movies with, and I trust them implicitly. They're brilliant artists, you know, everyone from Eric Steelberg, you know, my cinematographer, Steve Morrow, my production sound, Jason Blumenfeld, my first AD producer, Danny Glicker, my costumer. I mean, I've been working with the same group for a long time. Rob Simonson, the composer of my last two movies. It's not that any of us had done this before, but we all shared the same affection for Ghostbusters. And that's what it was about. It wasn't about, you know, had you made a Ghostbuster film before? None of us had. The idea was, do you care about it? Are you passionate about it? You know, do you want to get this right? Do you want to see it as told through your eyes and hands? And whether it was someone that I worked with, you know, 10 times, or someone like the creature creator, Arian, you know, who did Pan's Labyrinth and brought the Terror Dogs back to life, you know, or the puppeteer who worked on Jurassic Park, you know, doing the T-Rex leg, who did the leg of the Terror Dog for our film. It's about just loving movies, frankly, because that's what we're channeling through.
What are the firsts on this experience that stand out for you? Because there are things that you've never done clearly as a director in this, whether it's car chases or probably working on sound stages, et cetera.
First happy ending. No, definitely. Honestly, the first one you brought up hits the nail. I've always wanted to do a car chase. I love car chases, and people make fun of them, but they're great. And when I thought about, honestly, like speeder bikes, you know, Return of the Jedi.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I thought about. And when McKenna is hanging out the side of Ecto 1, flying around corners, that's what I wanted to feel like. Because when I was a kid, I wanted to be on Endor. I wanted to know what it was like to ride a speeder bike.
Right. It's like that edge of control. You're kind of in control, but you're almost about to fly off of it.
Exactly. And it's all just flying. You're completely vulnerable. I mean, it's just, I don't know who's handling safety protocol for the Empire, but speeder bikes look really dangerous.
High fatality rate on those.
Yeah, seriously. And I wanted a movie that felt like that. I wanted to put these young people at the edge of danger and make them do something really thrilling. So any young person in the audience would watch them and go, I want to sit on that chair. I want to hang out the side of Ecto 1 and catch a ghost.
How aware were you? You know, there's this term that used more and more for these kind of legacy sequels, whatever we call this kind of this subgenre of film of like fan service, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, this is a fan's movie. This is for anyone that grew up with Ghostbusters. I think it's for somebody that probably, if this is their first Ghostbusters movie, I'm sure it'll work too. But there is a lot in here to like applaud and get excited about if you've grown up with Ghostbusters. Is that something that, I mean, obviously it's on your mind. You want to kind of make the fans happy. And I don't mean that as a nefarious thing, but like, is that something where you're like, how much to put in? Like how many nods in a row and how to space them? You know what I mean? Is that something that you're cognizant of in the making of this?
I mean, the funny thing is this, it's a really sneaky movie because it really is one of my movies hiding inside a Ghostbusters film. It's a movie about a single mom and her two kids trying to fix her relationship, with her dad. I mean, that's what the movie is about. And in that sense, it's a 100% me movie, and it's dealing with human drama. And I bring that up because everyone can relate to that. Everyone knows what it's like to struggle to talk to your parents or your kids. Everyone knows what it's like to have long-standing grudges that you want to fix. Wanting to get closer to someone that you can't talk to anymore. That's what this movie really is about.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is the way in. Now, in addition to that, It is a Ghostbusters movie through and through, whether you've seen Ghostbusters 100 times or it's your first time in. It's about finding this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
It's about finding this gear and in that moment, discovering who you are. It's about being put on an adventure by the discovery. And at that point, we layer in so much Ghostbusters. Josh, there are Easter eggs I don't know about. I say that because I'm not the only one who's hiding them. Like,
right.
Everybody's hiding them. The sound designer is revealing to me on the mix stage, oh, by the way, I put that sound in there from this scene. I'm like, no kidding. Are you going to tell me about that? You know, it's set deck and props people hiding things in the background of the scenes. There is a level of Easter eggs that just no one is ever going to find in this movie. Favorites of mine, there is a straightened Slinky, because Egon, of course, as a kid, got half a Slinky and straightened it. There is the Ghost Sniffer, Venkman's Ghost Sniffer from, the first film. These are all just hiding in the background in places. So you can go frame by frame through this movie. You're just going to keep on finding stuff. Is
it a coincidence that this movie happens in arguably one of the darkest periods of our human existence, the last few decades? Like, did you need this kind of to make yourself happy in a way?
It's a great question. I came at this from such a personal point of view. This is a movie about a family reckoning with their legacy, and it's made by a director reckoning with his legacy. That's what I needed to do.
Right.
Now, I think it's a great time for popcorn films. It's a great time for big entertainment. I've been dying to get back to the movies. When I finally got back and I got to see Shang-Chi on the big screen, it's like one of my favorite experiences all year.
Totally.
Cannot wait to see James Bond. Cannot wait to see everything that's waiting for this at the end of the year. I loved Shang-Chi. I loved Zola. Like, I loved every big screen experience I got this year.
I feel like I appreciate them more. I don't know, like, if that sounds cheesy or whatever, but
God, yes.
Don't you think?
You're eating the popcorn and the trailers are playing and you feel like, oh, that's right. That's why I hid in a movie theater my entire childhood.
Yeah.
It's the safest, most wonderful place on earth. It's like Disneyland. And look, I love streaming as much as everybody else. Like, it got me through the pandemic.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to get back to was being back in a movie theater.
So with all the nods to the past films, perhaps, and this is why I bring it up. I don't know if you remember what is hanging in my office still. I haven't been back there in 18 months, but I have a Vigo the Carpathian poster in my office to intimidate my foes.
Yes, I remember this.
No Vigo love in this. We couldn't give him a nod. We couldn't give him.
Look, it's one movie in a huge mythology. But honestly, I wanted a movie that set the table for the future of Ghostbusters. And it was an opportunity to connect the generations, put a new movie out for young people to embrace this kind of young cast. And every culture in the world has a relationship with ghosts and the unknown. I would love to see Ghostbusters movies from those different cultures. I'd love to see Ghostbusters movies from all my favorite filmmakers. There is a lot of time and opportunity for Vigo the Carpathian to make his return.
Are you saying there's going to be a Janos Disney Plus series or whatever Sony's streaming service?
I don't know how Janos is doing. I put my money on Vigo more than Janos because look, are you saying that's the only painting of Vigo the Carpathian? Maybe he's riding a horse in another one. Maybe he's actually impaling somebody in another one. Maybe it's like Harry Potter. Can he go from like painting to painting? Wouldn't that be great if Vigo just showed up in like Starry Night?
Was there a temptation to reprise your role as Brownstone Boy number 2 from Ghostbusters 2 in the film?
Oh my God. Of all the things, you got a bigger chance at Janos than you got at Brownstone Boy number 2 showing up again.
Can you name drop who in your mind's eye would be an amazing filmmaker you'd like to see take on a Ghostbusters story?
I mean, I could, but I don't, because I don't want to jinx it, because I actually do believe in this idea. I really would love my favorite filmmakers, and I don't want to dream too big. I think that it's an incredible mythology. We all have a relationship with the unknown. And look, we're not all born looking like Thor and Wonder Woman. We're not all born with superpowers. What's great about this franchise, it's about everyone who can put on a flight suit. and that's everybody. And I'd love to see more movies that take place in Ghostbusters as directed by all kinds of filmmakers.
And what's your future, whether as someone like your dad that helps produce, or someone that could potentially direct more films? Like, is there more story charted out for these characters that you yourself would want to?
I have ideas.
Oversee?
I mean, look, 2 nights ago we played Comic-Con. That was
I want to know about all the sequels a month before the movie even comes out, Jason. I don't know why that's an unreasonable request.
I played my first Comic-Con as a director. And that was a crazy experience for me. And mostly because it felt like being at Sundance. And I didn't expect that.
It's still passion. It's still just people that love movies.
Who love movies. Yeah. And that, honestly, maybe I'm slow, maybe I'm late to the table, but that was a big moment for me, because that was the moment I went, oh, I can make Sundance movies and I can make Comic-Con movies and connect with people that I love.
I was going to say, does this open the aperture of your career for you? I mean, you've kind of like been in this really cool lane for
Josh,
15
I don't know how many times I have to tell you, I'm not directing the next Star Wars movie. Jesus.
The gentleman doth protest too much, people. What's happening?
Kathleen Kennedy's like, what the fuck is he talking about?
We get it. You wanted to direct a Star Wars movie, Jason. All right. Awkward. But it must give you confidence that, like, you knew you could do a type of movie, and now you're getting some really great feedback on this. Yeah. You can do this kind of a movie too, that plays to 4 quadrants, et cetera, blah, blah, all the business speak we want. Does it excite you as, like, in a new phase? Like, yeah, you know what? 5 years ago, if you had asked me, do I want a Marvel or DC meeting? Maybe that's weird. Now, sure, I'll take that meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, as long as I get to tell a personal story at the core of it, I'm interested in all stories. And I grew up loving these movies, and it was a real thrill to make this one. And that car chase sequence at the center of this film, the mantra chase, I literally can watch that over and over. If I'm in a movie theater and they're testing the print, I say, jump to the car chase. I want to watch that again. And I will sit and watch it like I'm watching it for the first time.
Well, and now that you've, like, kind of accepted your fate as someone that can wrestle with your dad's amazing legacy too. So is it Kindergarten Cop sequel next? Is the Dave sequel next? What do you tackle with from Dad's Uber?
Look, Josh, I don't want to be too offended by this, but you ask me a lot about which films I'm going to direct of my father's. When have you ever asked him which films of mine he's going to remake?
At the Triplets Junket, I promise I will be asking about the Labor Day sequel. Okay.
How dare you point to my biggest failure? You could have brought up any film. What an asshole.
That's why you love me. I like to pick.
It's true. It is true. That is true.
Let's talk about comfort movies. I asked you for some comfort movie picks, especially in the last year and a half. We've needed comfort in our lives.
All right.
You've made a modern comfort movie here. You gave me a few picks. Can I at least start with the depraved one, because that's where my mind goes, and then we'll get to the more sweet stuff. It says a lot about you, and this is, again, I think, why you're awesome, that you chose a 157-minute about the most infamous serial killer of the 20th century. Tell us, Jason Reitman, why is Zodiac a comfort movie?
I don't know why, but if I'm having a rough night and I can't sleep, I will pour myself a whiskey and watch Zodiac. One, it's a brilliantly made film by one of the greatest living directors. 2, there's kind of an inevitability to it. There's just something that's part of its nature. And when I'm spiraling and I can't find my way through something, to spend 3 hours with Jake Gyllenhaal, whose character can't seem to learn the lesson that he's never going to catch this guy. Spoiler alert. That's how you do it. You're supposed to say it after, right?
Yeah, that's
you give away.
Rosebud was a sled. Spoiler alert.
And then you say spoiler alert, right?
Yep.
I'm learning as I go here. There's a rhythm to it. There's a mood to it. I kind of get lost in it, and it's curious, right? Because I know a lot of people when they say, what is your comfort movie? and they bring up really joyful movies. And there's lots of really joyful movies that I want to watch, like when I'm in a good mood. Like if I'm in a good mood, yeah, like I want to watch E.T. and I want to watch Ferris Bueller and I want to watch, you know, Raiders and Star Wars. And I want to watch also, you know, movies like my favorites, like, you know, Shampoo and Carnal Knowledge. I got, you know, I got 100
Sure.
movies that I love. But when I think comfort movie, I think, all right, what do you reach for? Like you reach for the whiskey. And Zodiac is a movie that just has this brilliant tonal line that it never breaks. It's so confident, and it just kind of lulls me over time watching these characters, you know, who are obsessives. I'm an obsessive. So to watch other obsessives, I don't know, there's something about it.
No, you hit the nail on the head for me too. I mean, I actually find virtually all of David Fincher's work comforting in a bizarre way. I think, ironically, the only one that I don't think of that way is like Benjamin Button, which is arguably his kind of least dark film. But there is something very reassuring about such a confident filmmaker that just draws you in. And you're right, this is a movie about obsession, and you find yourself like you're one of the crazies with them. You're like you're part of the case too, and it's just
you lose a sense of time, right? Because you don't even know what year you're in at a certain point. But you're right about that, about all his films. I mean, like here's a guy who famously, like I don't know if you noticed this, do this, but he steadies every shot. You know how you can stabilize a shot in post?
Sure.
He stabilizes every shot. And that is why his films have that perfectly locked feeling to them. I work with some of his team on my films, and there's a shot in Zodiac which is like some absurd, like 400-foot dolly track move. And they took this product, Great Stuff, that they use for insulation in houses, which is like basically cement in a can. And they put Great Stuff on 400 feet of dolly track to make sure that the dolly track just wouldn't move a hair after they set it, which destroyed the dolly track. I mean, yeah, that's for that long driving track where they're going through, like, you know, and he does that on all of his movies. Even the music, if you think about the music that he works, it has that rhythmic lull to it, that it's just kind of slowly coming for you. I mean, it's part of the genius of what he does. But it's like being on a bicycle. I don't know.
Is there a favorite scene that jumps out? I mean, there's
in Zodiac.
Yeah.
I mean, the scariest scene in that movie is the picnic scene.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's a Hitchcock scene. It's absolutely terrifying. Like for me, the picnic scene in Zodiac is up there with the shower scene in Psycho. And
ironically, because it almost has like the least amount of bells and whistles to it. It's just sort of matter of fact. It just happens. It's just so.
Which is what makes it so great. I mean, look, there's a tendency for people to obsess over filmic scenes that are kind of extraordinary in their amount of layers. People love scenes that have crazy camera work and visual effects. They love scenes where the acting is at 12. Show me a scene like that picnic scene where it's just quiet, clean filmmaking, subtle acting, absolutely terrifying. And then you're showing me a director who has complete control over the audience, who can literally just turn it like he's just got a screwdriver in your brain.
And perhaps, it's funny in that previous conversation, we're just talking about these like intricate shots or whatever. He clearly knows like the contrast between that scene and the rest of the film, and perhaps that's why it stands out all the more. All right, so let's get a little sweeter. You contain multitudes, thankfully, like all of us.
I'm just remembering Sony's plea to they're like, just smile. It's not young adult, just smile.
Oh gosh. Well, let's smile a little bit about one of the great trilogies of films ever made. I feel like they always make fun of this as like the least successful commercial trilogy ever, but it stands the test of time. You chose two of the films in the Before trilogy. Tell us why these two in particular resonate with you.
Well, first I want to talk about Richard Linklater, because Richard Linklater is a guy we talk about, but we don't talk about enough. Like, we don't talk about Linklater as much as we talk about Quentin. We don't talk about Linklater as much as we talk about PTA. We don't talk about Linklater as much as we talk about Wes. Richard Linklater is one of the most important filmmakers alive. Slacker gave birth to a generation of filmmakers. Dazed and Confused is top 3 movies about high school. ever made. If he had just done those 2 films and retired, he'd be good.
Right.
If he had also added School of Rock, he'd be good. If he had also added Boyhood, he'd be good. And yet we're still not talking about the most important movies he ever made, in my opinion. Before Sunrise and Before Sunset often get overlooked, I think because they're romantic. And so as a result of them not being about huge cultural moments, as a result of them not being epics, they don't get talked about in that same conversation. But they are epic. In those 3 movies, he has followed the trajectory of love in a way that almost no other filmmaker has, and done so in this way that mirrors the sloppy way in which we fall in love. That first movie, in which you watch 2 people fall in love over the course of the night, is the most accurate meet cute of all time. The hardest thing to write, meet cute. And these 2 people were perfectly played by Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. They're embarrassing, they are cringy, they are wonderful, and they are deeply in love. And by the end of it, it hurts the heart how much you want them to be together. I want to fall in love with like that every day of my life. And the fact that it leaves you wanting so much more, and that 9 years later you were able to get it in Before Sunset, in what is the perfect film in that series, which has one of the best closing lines in cinema history. You drop me into that film and I'm a happy person. So I'm not all Zodiac.
It's interesting because, I mean, those films stand out for so many reasons. And I think one of the reasons they work is the close relationship between the actors and the filmmaker.
Yeah.
Ethan and Julie were credited. Apparently they were screenwriters in the first one. They just weren't credited, but they were credited in the other 2 films as well. They were Oscar nominated for the second film.
Yeah.
That's something that, I mean, you've used a company of actors throughout much of your films. There's one in particular that pops up in this that I won't reveal that made me so happy to see late in the film.
Thank you. I know what you're talking about. Thank you.
What do you, I guess, I don't know, my question is, except that, like, have you found what actors have enriched your work in terms of beyond just like showing up on set, in just knowing them and helping you through a process?
The list is actually too hard to name. Obviously J.K. Simmons is a very meaningful actor to me. He is my muse. It was this moment where I, just kind of realized on Thank You for Smoking that he spoke my voice, and I wanted everything I wrote to be said out loud by him. And I mean, I've made like 12 movies with him now, everything I've ever directed, but also, Whiplash. I remember talking to Damien and being like, it's got to be J.K. Simmons. And that was like really my one thing I did on Whiplash was be like, it's got to be J.K. Simmons. And
pretty good note.
And then, Jennifer's Body. And I love that man. And he is kind of like a second father or an older brother. Charlize Theron, I feel linked with her to life because of Young Adult and Tully, and I hope we make a lot more movies. George Clooney, as much the filmmaker as the actor, because when I worked with him as an actor, he also had an impact on me as a director, because he was an Oscar-nominated director and loves filmmaking as much as any actor or director I've ever met. Grew up around the camera, and all he wants to do is talk about technique and shots and what a set is supposed to feel like. Caitlin Dever is a young actress, who I worked with on Men, Women, and Children and did music on Tully and appeared in, The Front Runner, and watching her kind of grow into what could possibly like be Meryl Streep. She's so brilliant. Has had an impact on my heart. Look, I love the actors in this new movie.
Yeah, McKenna, if people haven't seen her in previous work, just like seeing her on the panel versus what she is in this film, it's obviously a transformation for her. She's it's a true performance.
Oh, I know, right? Because like in person, she's just like the most delightful, effervescent young woman.
Bubbly teenager.
She also is a very contained character. McKenna Grace is just a huge talent in the making, and it's crazy because she's only 15 years old. She just got nominated for an Emmy. And she's been in so many things already. Finn Wolfhard, also in love with filmmaking. We
I know.
talk every day about
Yep.
writers, directors. You wrote a whole movie while we were making Ghostbusters. And these new kids, Celeste is not a kid. I can't, and I'm getting old. Like Celeste O'Connor and Logan Kim, people probably don't know. They're going to fall in love with them. I mean, Logan Kim's literally never done a movie before.
Have you suggested to your buddy Diablo, what's the Diablo Cody Ghostbusters story? I'd watch that.
I mean, if you don't think that I haven't had this conversation with her,
I'm sure you have, of course.
And you don't know our relationship well enough. Yeah, of course I've had. I'd love to see a Diablo Cody Ghostbusters movie. She's one of the best storytellers alive. And, we've made 4 movies together, and I would love to make a 5th.
And lastly, before I release you to the wild, I'm curious. Like you mentioned this earlier, we discussed about how this obviously works for Ghostbusters fans, and I think, I mean, I'm just curious, like how it plays to someone that is new to Ghostbusters. Did you show this to people that just had never seen Ghostbusters before, just out of curiosity to see how it played?
Yeah, we had to wait a long time to test this movie.
Yeah.
And when we eventually tested the movie, we showed it to an audience. Half the audience had never seen the original Ghostbusters, which I thought was kind of wild because, like, in my head, I'm like, hasn't everyone seen Ghostbusters? But
Right.
Look, there's a lot of young people who've never seen it. And it actually tested higher with them. This is a movie about a family discovering who they are, where they come from, and where they're going. Everyone understands what that's like. And the way that this young girl discovers the pack, the way this teenage boy discovers the car, it is a road into this movie. And it was really kind of built that way. I mean it when I say, whether, you've seen the original 1,000 times or whether this is your first step into the Ghostbusters universe, this movie is waiting for you with open arms.
A true heartfelt congratulations to you, sir. One of the joys of doing what I've done for the 3,000 years I've been doing is to get to talk to people at different stages of their career and see how they evolve. And it's so cool to me that we've talked about every manner of film and that here we are now talking full circle about Ghostbusters, about your Ghostbusters movie. And I hope you're breathing a sigh of relief and ready to enjoy the spoils of releasing something like this that will really be a big cultural moment. That's huge. That's rare, and it's exciting.
I'm simultaneously thrilled to be seeing this in theaters and intimidated by the prospect of making that Star Wars. Oh, shit.
No. How about the Walter Peck spinoff? That's my other pitch.
I've made my Ghostbusters movie. Now it's like, I don't know.
Who's the Star Wars character? Come on, let's flesh this out. What do you got?
What Star Wars character would it be? All right. The Star Wars character, it's the dead Ewok.
There's my Zodiac friend. There he is. He's back. Wow. Congratulations again, man. Always a pleasure to catch up with you, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Yeah, indeed. It's great seeing you next time in person.